To be the champs, you got to beat the champs, and we didn't do it tonight. Yeah, you can either get it done or you can't, and we didn't get it done.
For the fifth video in my NFL preview series, I want to talk about if the Buffalo Bills can finally break through in this 2025 season, and we know what that means. Ultimately, in the grand scheme of things, the Buffalo Bills and Josh Allen, they performed at a high level the past 4 to 5 years. Now, we know they've had a couple of letdowns, particularly when you look in the 2022-23 season when they lost to the Cincinnati Bengals in the divisional round, losing 27-10 in that game in the snow. In Buffalo, mind you, the Bengals still dominated. That was a disappointing performance. But besides that, the Grim Reaper for the Buffalo Bills and the reason that they haven't been able to get over the hump in terms of getting to the Super Bowl and then winning a Super Bowl is the Kansas City Chiefs. They've played them repeatedly in the 2020 season, losing to the Chiefs in the AFC Championship game, then losing to them in the playoffs again in the 21-22 season, then losing to them at home in the 23-24 season in this past year, when it seemed like the Buffalo Bills were finally going to get over the hump, when a lot of people predicted them to finally beat the Chiefs, who, yes, were 15-2 in the 2024 season, but looked very vulnerable and won a total of 12 one-score games. So a lot of people looked at them as not being the same juggernaut of a Chief team despite making the Super Bowl again. The Bills were so close to beating the Chiefs last year in the playoffs, and still they lost 32-29. And there were a lot of opportunities. It looked like Josh Allen had found Dalton Kincaid for a first down conversion, but it ended up being dropped. And essentially, the question continues to loom for the Buffalo Bills and their franchise if they'll ever be able to get it done. Because we know in the 1990s, which is a crazy thing to say, they lost 4 straight Super Bowls. That's some trauma for real, getting to it there repeatedly and still not winning and getting blown out on multiple occasions, particularly against the Dallas Cowboys. Then in combination to that as well, for the Buffalo Bills this past year, they beat the Lamar Jackson led Baltimore Ravens, who a lot of people thought should have been MVP, but Josh Allen won the award. And we'll talk about specifically his stats, because if you look at Josh Allen, man, he's been sensational in terms of not only the playoffs, but just how he's been able to perform in the past previous seasons under different regimes, under different roster turnover, considering his contract, and just how things go when you have to build a team around a quarterback who's making now $55+ million. But how he's been able to be the steady force, and really how he's changed as a player, because early in his career his reputation was that he wasn't the most accurate player, that he was a turnover waiting to happen. But now in the past few seasons he's really been able to lower the turnover aspect of his game, because after throwing 18 interceptions in 2023, he only threw for 6 this past season in 2024, being the lowest in his career. And the season that he had this past year, winning the MVP award, as we all know, having a total of 40 touchdowns, and by the way, adding to that feat, he's the first player in NFL history to have 35 or more passing and rushing touchdowns in 4 consecutive seasons. He ran for 12 rushing touchdowns in 2024 in combination with over 500 rushing yards too. We know how dynamic of an athlete that he is, and just recently turned 29 years old in May. He is for sure in the prime of his career. Like, there's no doubt about Josh Allen. He's in that top 4 quarterback range with Mahomes, and then whether you want to put Allen at 2, Lamar, Burrow, any of those quarterbacks, that's for sure the top 4. And we know that Josh Allen is in that upper echelon of the best quarterbacks in the league, and they're still going to have a lot of windows to win with Josh Allen in what, maybe the next 5 to 8 years potentially. But the question is, will they be able to ever get past Patrick Mahomes? They've gotten past Mahomes. I mean, they've gotten past Lamar Jackson. You can make the argument that this same question could arise if they play against the Bengals again in the playoffs, although the Bengals have to stop starting off slow and putting themselves in a hole, and then like last season getting hot but still missing the playoffs, they have to stop that. But for the Buffalo Bills, I think that they're built to play well and look no further than their division alone, because let's just be real and keep it a buck. I know teams like the Patriots, they've added a lot of weapons. Drake May going into his second year, having a really competent coach now, and Mike Vrabel, who was one of the best coaches in the league. Josh McDaniels being the offensive coordinator now, bringing in players like Milton Williams, drafting guys at the running back position like Travion Henderson, and adding some more wide receiver help, and Kyle Williams and Stephon Diggs in free agency. I'm not even going to provide any suspense to this. The Bills will still win the division as long as 80 to 90% of their roster is healthy, which I guess you could say is a question mark. They're still going to win a division, but that's not the question about what the Bills will do in their division, because they've won the AFC East now for 5 consecutive seasons. That doesn't even hold too much of significance, definitely not to the Bills, but really in terms of how league experts and people around the NFL view the Buffalo Bills, because it ultimately comes down to getting past the Chiefs or getting around the Chiefs, whether the Chiefs end up losing to another team or the Bills can just ultimately beat them heads on. And that's what the question really is, because that's what the breakthrough means. And really, when you look at it in a nutshell, if you want to talk about breaking through all the way, the 49ers will tell you that you need to break through in the Super Bowl because they've gotten there 2 times in the past 6 seasons and still have no rings to show for it. You want to get it done at the highest level, but really being in a tough AFC where you not only have the Chiefs to worry about, the Ravens, the Bengals, the Texans now, the Broncos are emerging, the Chargers are getting better with Harbaugh being the head coach there, and more teams of that nature. And I guess you can say the Dolphins a little bit in their division too, though, but although we saw in the 2023 season, the Bills at one point were 6-6, and then they won 5 straight games and ended up knocking off the Dolphins to win a division again. So I'm not going to necessarily put too much weight on them. They have to show me more, particularly with the Dolphins. That'll be also the next team that we talk about in this season preview series, as we are talking about the AFC East now, starting with the Buffalo Bills. But the Bills, they're measured by what they do, not only the playoffs, but in the deep rounds of the playoffs, in the divisional round, in the championship games, because they've been to every round except getting to the Super Bowl. They haven't been to the Super Bowl since 1994 when they were routed by the Dallas Cowboys, losing 30-13, and they still have 0 Super Bowls to show for. So they're definitely trying to change that narrative in the Josh Allen era. And I know a lot of people have had their questions about their head coach Sean McDermott in terms of if you can win with him as a head coach. Yes, he is defensive minded, but he's had a plethora of really good to solid offensive coordinators to help Josh Allen, really, that have been integral to his development. And even beyond, after those offensive coordinators have left for different jobs, Josh Allen has been able to be the consistent factor and force to steadying that offense and really elevating it. Because if you look at the pieces on the Bills offense, you're not looking at number 1 receivers, you're not looking at top tier running backs, although I will say James Cook, he was really good in the 2024 season, not just from a fantasy perspective, but just in general, but from an actual perspective watching the game of football, because as a receiver, but also as a runner, he accounted for 18 total touchdowns, having 16 rushing on 207 carries, over 1,000 rushing yards, and he had 258 receiving yards as well too. So James Cook was integral in the backfield from a running and receiving perspective, and I know that he's been having some frustrations not getting a new contract and stuff like that. I think it'll be handled, but he can't expect to get higher money than a player like a Derrick Henry or Josh Jacobs, or especially Saquon Barkley, and in particular Saquon Barkley and Derrick Henry, who were just extended. Saquon just signed for a 2-year $41.2 million deal with $36 million guaranteed and an additional $15 million in incentives, and Derrick Henry signed also for a 2-year contract extension with $25 million guaranteed. So that's probably the market for him, but I don't even know if the Bills general manager Brandon Beane is willing to budge off of that. I think a lot of people in the league nowadays, and I think Brandon Beane is one of them, he looks at the running back position as being very replaceable and that you can definitely run a committee type of system with, because not only with James Cook, but they also have Ty Johnson, who had a lot of good moments too in the 2024 season. And alongside Ty Johnson, Ray Davis had a lot of good moments as he had over 400 rushing yards too, and in the receiving game he was solid as well. So I say all of that to say that Josh Allen, he has done a lot of great work with some solid weapons, but also he has shown that he hasn't necessarily had to have the upper echelon of weapons, because last year they traded for Amari Cooper before the trade deadline, which was a solid move, but it wasn't the same Amari Cooper, and we obviously see right now, as he is still an unsigned free agent, that the command for him isn't as large as it once was. So Amari, he is unfortunately past his prime, but the receiving corps that the Buffalo Bills have in a combination with their tight ends, I think is certainly one of the most physical and solid and steady in the league, and that's why the rapport that they've been able to have with Josh Allen has been so steady and why they have had one of the best offenses in the league. And I look at the game against the Detroit Lions last year in the regular season as an example of why it works perfectly, in that for the Buffalo Bills, they don't necessarily need to have a top 5 receiver in their offense to flourish and win at a high level. If you look at that game, Josh Allen had over 362 passing yards and 2 touchdowns, completing 23 out of his 24 passing attempts. James Cook had 105 rushing yards. But also, if you look at it from a receiving perspective, they were very balanced. Ty Johnson, he had 5 receptions for 114 receiving yards. Keon Coleman, he had a 64-yard reception. I mean, Keon Coleman, I think he potentially could be the guy for the Buffalo Bills to emerge into that potential number 1 wide receiver going into his second season, being a second-round pick in the 2024 draft. Then you have a player like a Dalton Kincaid. He had 4 receptions for 53 yards. Dawson Knox had 42 receiving yards. Khalil Shakir had 6 receptions for 39 receiving yards and a touchdown. And Khalil Shakir, he's very intriguing. He was extended by the Buffalo Bills on a 4-year deal that's worth up to $60.2 million. I think he's a really good slot receiver and a perfect slot receiver for this Buffalo Bills offense. So Josh Allen, I think he just continues to elevate his teammates and his team overall. And that's the thing that we have to give a lot of credit to. But ultimately, when it comes down to it, in the playoffs, they have to make plays. And really, they do. One question I have, particularly for the Bills, is their defense. According to PFF, going into the 2025 season, the Bills are ranked as the 5th best defense in the league. And I think that's very valid, because if you look at what they did, even from the offseason alone, I like some of the moves that they made. They signed Joey Bosa to a 1-year, $12.6 million prove-it deal. That's really good to add another player to their pass rush, a proven player. I know he's 30 years old now, but can definitely help with the defensive line. And that's not necessarily where a lot of my questions arise, because if you look at what their team was able to do from a defensive perspective, they were solid in most areas. The one concern that I do have, though, though is that last season they allowed their opponents to an average of over 341 yards per game, and they ranked 17th overall in the league in that aspect. Greg Rousseau, he was really solid. He led the team with 11 sacks this past season, and their run defense was one of the best in the league. They allowed 4.5 yards per carry, and in totality they allowed 1,963 rushing yards on 435 attempts. And if you want to look at that in a more simplified term, they allowed around 115 rushing yards per game. So definitely one of the better run stopping groups in the league. But my question for them is their third down defense. They allowed their opponents to convert on 44.1% of their third down attempts, and essentially the statistics on that is that teams converted 88 of their 201 third down attempts against the Bills. So if you look at that, you might react to that being not crazy, but I mean 44% is close to 50%, and you don't want teams converting half of the time against your defense on third down when you think you backed them up, when you think that you're about to get the ball back, and then boom, it's a back-breaking play against your secondary that continues the possession and continues to drive. So things like that certainly is stuff you want to clean on from a Sean McDermott perspective, who is a defensive-minded head coach, and also the defensive coordinator Bobby Babich. But for their offense though, I love what Joe Brady has done, and it's really a big deal that he was able to stay another year as their offensive coordinator. Depending on the continued success of this team though, I don't think Joe Brady will be here too much longer, but as I mentioned though, Josh Allen has dealt with multiple solid coordinators who have went on the go, whether it's Brian Daboll, who is now the head coach of the New York Giants, or Ken Dorsey. He was solid at times, but we know that he was fired in 2023, which led to the promotion of Joe Brady, who has been able to be steady and a great offensive coordinator in this league, particularly when you look at the stats under Joe Brady. They've been very balanced, and they've also set a lot of different Bills franchise records, particularly in points last season, scoring 525 and having 65 total touchdowns too as well under Joe Brady. They've been able to be more efficient. As I mentioned, Josh Allen only had 6 interceptions in the 2024 season, being able to take care of the ball, and they've really been able to have a philosophy by receiving wise but running wise, as I mentioned, by committee, with them not necessarily having number one type of receiver or playmaker besides Josh Allen. So for this Buffalo Bills team, they're built uniquely in terms of their opponents, like the Kansas City Chiefs, or in terms of the Baltimore Ravens, who are very balanced in their running game, in the RPO game, with them having Derrick Henry and other weapons like Zay Flowers, Rashad Bateman, Mark Andrews, Isaiah Likely, etc. But the Bills, for them to break through, it comes down to them beating the Chiefs, and it comes down to them being potent and complementary on both sides to finally get it done and get their first Super Bowl in franchise history. But before we dive deeper into that and talk about even more if the Bills can break through in this upcoming 2025 NFL season, make sure you hit the like button and subscribe and turn on post notifications. We post videos here about the NFL, the NBA, pop culture, college football, college basketball, DC Marvel, vlogs, cooking videos, all stuff like that. Follow me on Instagram at SwaggyRuss and TikTok at SwaggyRuss02 for short content videos. And just stay tuned. A lot of stuff coming in this series over the next month, because as we all know, the 2025 NFL season starts on September 4 with the Philadelphia Eagles playing the Dallas Cowboys. So expect so many videos in these next 5 to 6 weeks, guys. It's going to be insane. It's going to blow your mind, but we're going to talk about every single team, because we have, after this Buffalo Bills video, 27 more teams to talk about. So like I said, we're going to be posting a lot of content, and we're going to be eating good around here. I mean, we're going to be previewing every single NFL team. And if you're a fan of the NFC East, we've already covered those teams as well. But with that being said though, guys, let's go on and talk about if the Buffalo Bills can break through in the 2025 NFL season. So in this video, what I'm not trying to do is make this about a Josh Allen or Bills versus Chiefs or Patrick Mahomes type of thing, because we all know, just like in basketball back in the 90s, or just like in the 2010s with LeBron in the Eastern Conference, and with the 90s with Michael Jordan, you have to beat that guy. You have to beat 15, or same thing in the NFL per se with Tom Brady, Peyton Mannings of the world, Drew Brees of the world. Those type of players, they have to beat Tom Brady to get to the ultimate point. And sometimes Peyton Manning, for example, did, and sometimes he didn't. For Josh Allen, for Lamar Jackson, for Joe Burrow, for any of these other quarterbacks, potentially a CJ Stroud with the Texans, they got to get through Patrick Mahomes to get their ring, and only time will tell with that. But if you look at Josh Allen's playoff stats, man, he performs and steps up. It's never necessarily his fault per se. Football is the ultimate team game, so there's a lot of different factors we can talk about to why the Bills haven't been able to break through from an offensive standpoint or defensively as well too. But I will say though, Josh Allen, he has been the one force multiplier who has been consistent and really dominant in his playoff career. He has a 7-6 playoff record, and I know, oh, that's almost a 500 record. It's not necessarily the greatest. That's still really good in the playoffs, guys, considering who he's played against and the conference that he is in, because we can acknowledge that the NFC has definitely gotten stronger over the past couple of seasons, but the AFC clears most definitely. The stats really back this argument up, because if you look at Josh Allen's performances in the playoffs, he has a passer rating of over 101.7, nearly a 102 passer rating, but even beyond the rating, he has over 3,300 passing yards, 25 touchdowns, and only 4 interceptions in those 13 games. A 25-to-4 touchdown to interception ratio in the playoffs. I mean, that's nearly flawless. Obviously, it's not flawless, but it's nearly flawless. And with that, he has technically had 7 rushing touchdowns in the playoffs too. So essentially, he's had 32 total touchdowns in his playoff career with only 4 interceptions. Now that is efficiency to me. And with the Buffalo Bills, like I talked about, it comes down really to their defense being able to hold up in the back end in against these dynamic teams. And like I said, it's tough. It's tough in the AFC when you're playing against a dual threat quarterback, really the best dual threat quarterback that we've seen in NFL history, like Lamar Jackson, which, mind you, by the way, the Bills, they were able to force the Ravens into 3 turnovers with a Lamar Jackson fumble and interception and a Mark Andrews fumble in that divisional round game in the 2024-25 season. So it's not like to say that the Bills defense has been slouching that much. Like I said, really a big question mark is them on their third down defense, but they still have a top 5 to 10 defense in the league. So that's one thing. But like I said, it's just been not necessarily bad luck, because I don't want to get too intricate in that area, but I don't necessarily believe in luck. It's just been that they have consistently been having to play against the best quarterback in the league. And at times, even when Patrick Mahomes hasn't necessarily played like the best quarterback in the league, he knows what it takes to win in different situations and moments and scenarios to still get his team to the top, whether he has played the Bills on the road in the 2023-24 season in the playoffs or in previous years and other years like last season, beating them at home. They've had the ball last. That's really what it came down to a lot of times too. We saw that for sure when they played against each other. When the Chiefs were able to force the game into overtime after the Bills looked like they were going to win the game, there was 13 seconds left on the clock, and the Chiefs were able to drive down the field and kick a field goal, and then the Chiefs ended up clutching that in overtime. So like sometimes it just comes down to that, the quarterback having the ball last. But like I said, things like that, ultimately outliers happen in those type of scenarios. You still have to put teams away to make sure that you can secure the win. In the Buffalo Bills, unfortunately, with Josh Allen playing great with a 32-4 touchdown to interception ratio, it still hasn't been enough. And the question is, will it be enough this season? Will they have enough this season? I went a little in depth with their offense earlier, and now I want to talk about their defense a little bit more. Beyond the third down stats and things of that nature, they have a really good roster, and like I said, a top 5 to 10 defense in the league. Players like a Matt Milano, he missed the first 11 games of the 2024 season, but when he slid back in to the lineup at that linebacker position, he was able to be steady and solid for them and made plays when he needed to. And I do like their first round pick and Maxwell Harrison. Now we will see the apparent sexual assault allegations that he had. Hopefully they're not true and things like that. But I mean, of course, if it is true, there needs to be justice and consequences, of course. But I don't want to talk about that too much. But from a football perspective, though, if he's able to play, he's going to be able to help in the back end at the cornerback position. Because if you look at him, what he did at Kentucky, particularly in 2023, that was his most impressive season. He had 5 interceptions and 2 pick six as well, and 55 tackles. I think if he's able to be in that 2023 form, Maxwell Harrison, he's going to be a huge boost to that secondary in the Buffalo Bills. But talking more about the trenches, because that's where I really want to focus on, and they've been one of the best in the trenches for sure. They have Ed Oliver, who I think is still one of the best defensive tackles in the league. He commands a lot, not only in the running game, but also from a pass rushing perspective, and able to clog offensive linemen to get in the quarterback's face to add pressure. Like I said, Joey Bosa, he's going to be able to help provide some more depth at the edge position, especially after releasing a player like a Von Miller, and they kind of had to. They had no question, because the contract that he was making with the amount of games that he was not playing, it was just really killing their cap, and they had to get out of that contract. So although Von Miller, he is one of the greatest defensive linemen and players of all time, in the Bills era, he just wasn't available enough, and the production wasn't there too, so they had to make a move there. But they have players like a Christian Benford, who I like at the cornerback position. Middle linebacker Terrell Bernard, he's solid as well too. Shaq Thompson, but I like him. And I remember a lot of people last season, they predicted the Bills to take a slide and things of that nature because of all the different releases that they made, and they've made some releases this offseason as well too. They got rid of a player like a Rasul Douglas, who had been with the organization for a while, and even when you look at 2023, the type of releases that they made, they got rid of players like a Jordan Poyer, a Tre'Davious White. And after that, I remember a lot of people thought that their defense was cooked and things of that nature, and they were going to allow a lot in the back end. And like I said, on the third down conversions they did, but overall, from a roster standpoint and throughout the season, the Bills still were one of the best defenses in the league. And I think that's a testament to really Sean McDermott's defensive scheme being implemented on this group to be able to still make plays and create turnovers and havoc when they needed to in areas and in spots. Just for them, they're going to continue to need to hone into that against these really elite quarterbacks that they're playing against in the AFC, because it does not get easier. And then potentially, if they were to get through to get to the Super Bowl in the NFC as well too, because we see teams like the Eagles, like the Lions, the Commanders, the Rams, there's a lot to prepare for from a overall defensive standpoint in the trenches and in the secondary to put together a performance to get you to win it all. Now the Bills had a 13-4 record this past season in 2024, and I'm not gonna lie, I could see them having a similar record this upcoming season, 13-4, 12-5, something like that. And if you look at their schedule, I really like a lot of their matchups, because there's a good mix of contending teams and also teams. So yeah, but like in their first game, Sunday Night Football, which is going to be a beautiful matchup, playing against the Baltimore Ravens, a rematch of the 2024-25 divisional round. That's going to be a really good game. Really, to me, that can go either way, because depending on the day, you can make the argument that the Ravens are the better team, and another day the Bills are the better team. Now the Bills, they won that playoff game, so they have the bragging rights, and we'll see in this game, but ultimately also if they play against each other in the playoffs, which is true. But that's a really good game that can go either way. And when we talk about these games in the AFC East, I'm not gonna lie, guys, like I said, I think the Bills are gonna win the division. division for a 6th year in a row, and I wouldn't be surprised if they sweep the division. Now, if a team were to beat them once, I would think it would probably be the Patriots. I'm not gonna lie. No disrespect to the Dolphins, I just can't trust them, and I don't think that they're a physical team. I'm just being honest. So if you look at weeks 2 and 3, they play against the Jets in week 2, and they play the Dolphins in week 3. I think those are wins. The Saints, oh my goodness, I think that's a win. I don't even need to elaborate on that too much. And they play against the Patriots in week 5. Like I said, that's an intriguing matchup right there. So we'll see, because the Patriots, they are improved. I think the Patriots, and we'll talk about that more when I preview their video soon, I think that they could potentially win 8 to 9 games this upcoming season, and maybe in the right situation, if everything goes right, maybe even 10 and potentially be a wild card team. But I think that the Bills, they're still clearly better and heads and shoulders better than every single team in the AFC East. And they have the Falcons. That's an intriguing matchup. Definitely have the talent offensively. We'll see what they do defensively, because we know that they made those 2 first-round picks for Jalon Walker, and also they made that trade for James Pierce Jr. in the first round too. So that'll be intriguing to see how their defense is built. But I think that, I mean, you could probably favor the Bills to win that game over the Falcons, especially over the Panthers in the following week. They play against the Chiefs as well too. It's crazy how the Bills have a 4-1 record against the Chiefs in the regular season, but an 0-4 record against the Chiefs in the playoffs. But that'll be a good game regardless of the situation. Then they play the Dolphins again. They play the Bucks. That'll be a really good game. Good game against the Texans too as well. I like that, because they played against each other, I believe, in week 4 or 5 last season, and the Texans won that game. So that'll be really good as well. It'll also be back in Houston, similarly to how it was in 2024. Then they play against the Steelers. They play against the Bengals as well too. A rematch of, like I said earlier, the divisional round in the 22-23 season. Then the Patriots again, the Browns, the Eagles. That'll be a really good game. I don't know if y'all remember, but in the 2023 season, when the Eagles and the Bills played in that overtime game, that was a really good watch. I love that game too. So we could potentially expect something similar to that, also being a December game. And at that point, teams will be positioning for the playoffs, trying to get a top speed in both respective conferences. So I think that'll be a pretty good matchup as well between Buffalo and Philly. And then lastly, playing against the Jets. So like I said, I think I can see the Bills going around 13-4 or 12-5 this upcoming season and winning the division again. The Bills ranked 23rd in their strength of schedule, so certainly favorable in terms of the teams that they'll be playing against this season. So that favors them in that aspect. Like I said, there's a good dose of contending teams and bad teams, so that helps them. And then if you look at their Vegas win total, if you're into betting, I'm not really into betting, but I think it's very relevant to the conversation. Their win total is 11.5, and like I said, I would definitely take the over on that. So this team, we know from a regular season perspective, and even making it to the first, second, and third round, they're able to do that. We know that. But are they going to be able to break through this season? I'm sorry, but I can't say yes to that. And I hope I'm wrong, because Josh Allen, he's one of my favorite players in the league, but I can't say yes. And I will say one thing, the AFC West is going to be tougher, and that's the Chiefs division. Of course, y'all know that, but I'm just making sure for the people who don't, reiterating that. Teams like the Broncos, the Chargers are going to be even better. And those two teams, along with the Chiefs, made the playoffs this past season. So I think that'll add some competition in their own division. But I think it's just too hard for me to say that the Bills are going to break through this year, whether that's because the Chiefs beat them again or a team like the Ravens win. Because although the Bills beat the Ravens last year in that playoff game, you can make many arguments that the Ravens really should have won that game. I think they should have won that game for sure, but I don't think that if the Bills and the Ravens play again in the playoffs this year, I don't think the Bills are going to beat them again, like 2 years in a row, essentially. I'm not saying that they can't beat them, but I'm saying 2 years in a row. I think the Ravens are too good to lose again in any type of fashion or that way. And then if they play against the Bengals and if the Bengals get their stuff together, I mean, we've seen the Bills get dominated by them in the playoffs before. So like I said, the Bills, they are definitely knocking on the door and getting close, but I just can't bet them necessarily to get over that hump. And they can make the AFC Championship game. Shoot, if everything goes right, they can make the Super Bowl and, hey, potentially win it. This team is definitely on that level. I would say this team is definitely a top 3 to 5 team in the NFL, but I think it's too grand to say that they will break through this year, because there's so many other extenuating factors that make it difficult to make that decision for me. And I think hopefully for Bills fans and for Josh Allen fans alike, that they end up breaking through eventually and getting their first Super Bowl in franchise history. But for the 2025 season, it's just hard for me to predict that, guys. But hey, I can be wrong, and I will eat crow for sure if I am. But I just don't necessarily see them breaking through in terms of winning a Super Bowl this season. They are a Super Bowl contending team, but it's hard for me to say that they will break through in that aspect. But like I said, guys, y'all let me know in the comments down below what y'all think. This team, I think, like I said, they're one of the best in the league. They're going to win their division as long as 80 to 90% of their roster stays healthy. But when I contextualize the meaning of breaking through, I mean essentially them winning a Super Bowl, getting past a team like the Chiefs and beating the NFC team. And I just don't see it this upcoming year, but it can happen. I can be wrong, and it can happen in the next few seasons, which I think one of these years it will, because Josh Allen is way too good to be one of these players, in my opinion, to never win a Super Bowl. And we've seen players, one of the best quarterbacks in all time, Dan Marino, he never won a Super Bowl. So it's certainly possible, but I think Josh Allen will get him one eventually. But I do not think that the Bills will break through in the 2025 season, but they will be close again. And unfortunately, in many circumstances, it has been them being close but losing in heartbreaking fashion in Buffalo. But yeah, guys, y'all let let me know in the comments down below what y'all think. Do y'all think that the Bills will break through this upcoming year? I know a lot of people probably will say no instantly, but I think I have to be an advocate for saying that the Bills, they are certainly good enough to get the job done, but I think it's just hard to necessarily say clear and cut out that, hey, I'm predicting them to win a Super Bowl, because we've seen when it's looked like many times that they were going to do that and be on that level and finally break through against the Chiefs or play against a different team and win and get to the next round. The reality has been far from that, and we've seen their deficiencies in different moments. So like I said, y'all let me know in the comments down below, do y'all think that the Bills will break through in the 2025 season? Because that's a compelling conversation in itself for sure. I can't believe I almost went the full video without mentioning it, but I think it's going to be pretty cool to see them on the offseason Hard Knocks as well, seeing their training camp process and things of that nature too. So that'll be more Buffalo Bill access for the fans and for fans of Josh Allen. With all that being said though, guys, make sure you hit the like button and subscribe and turn on post notifications. The next video in this NFL season preview series, we will be continuing the conversation in the AFC East, talking about the Miami Dolphins and how they will do in this upcoming 2025 season. Stay tuned for that, because that will be an intriguing breakdown for sure. But yeah, guys, this is a beautiful time. Training camp starts for every single team this time next week. I'm excited, guys. This is a beautiful time. NFL football is finally almost here. Preseason is almost here. We will continue to endure these hard days of the summer, because soon there will be plenty of football to watch, not only from the NFL perspective, but also college football too. So we're going to be eating good very soon, guys. Y'all stay patient. It's almost here. So I'm excited for it, guys. And y'all let me know in the comments down below how you think the Bills will do. And let me know your favorite team in the comments down below, because like I said, by the end of this series, we will be done talking about every single team. And I'm looking forward to it for sure, guys. Y'all keep being blessed forever, guys. Know that you matter. You have purpose. God loves you. Jesus has so many great things for you, guys. Always remember that. Never question it. Keep Christ as your firm foundation always, guys. Y'all keep being blessed. Stay tuned for more content. I love y'all, guys. And y'all have a good one. Peace.